So, I made a video. That's good, right? Hopefully it won't be too much longer before my next one. Anyway, Open World Origins. It was a revival of the old Akimbo Origins video I did with a, well, rather major structural change. It's reverse chronological, which I think is the right fit for the Origins format, because it paints a narrative. We start in the present day and we kind of work towards the origin point. I think it worked alright, although I do think I need to work on the transitions between sections slightly. I think in future I'm going to go for a milestone structure, instead of having more of a severe sawtooth structure going between genres. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is Origins will probably return at some point. I've got some other stuff to do first, but I might do, I don't know. I'm not sure whether to do another single episode or a run of 6 episodes, or maybe a mini-series of 3 episodes. But I do think the format has legs. I want to do an episode on exploding barrels. Like, what was the first game to have exploding barrels? I wish I knew. I need to do my research. Donkey Kong, that had a lot of barrels. Some of them were on fire, but I don't think any of them exploded. I think it was Rambo 2. I think Rambo 2 set off this craze for exploding things. That was in 1985. I think what you had then are a lot of light gun games and stuff inspired by Rambo, like Ikari Warriors. And I think the whole exploding barrel thing might have come from that. But something I need to research. Other potential topics for Origins. Regenerating health, procedural generation, reloading, destructible terrain, boss fights, spikes, quick time events, that sort of thing. I think there's a few worthy Origins episodes. Anyway, next up is Iconic Arms. I have started work on Season 2 of that. One thing I'm doing differently this time around is I'm going to record all of the gameplay up front. When it comes to production, I want to get these videos out weekly. So I'm going to front load as much work as possible over the next week or two. Which means there might be a bit of a delay before I start, but when I do start, we should have a quite consistent schedule. In theory, anyway. Anyway, of matters bonus. The gameplay this week is Diablo 3 Ultimate Evil Edition on the Xbox One. It was going to be Smash Brothers, but I forgot to record it, so instead you can have this footage, which I had lying around. Anyway, let's get on to the questions. Anthony Knight says, are you a fan of Legos? I'm enough of a fan to know that Lego should never be plural. But yeah, I dig Lego. I don't really buy much of it these days or have a collection of it. But back when I was a kid, yeah, I had loads of it. Lego Technic, they were always my favourite sets. I had, my favourite I think was the Lego Test Car. It was a blue and red sort of thing with suspension and all sorts of fancy stuff. I liked that. That was cool. Aidan McNeil says, opinion on Tunnock's caramel wafers. They're brilliant. One thing I like about them is on the wrapper, it tells you how many of them they sell a week. It says something like, over 5 million of these biscuits are made and sold every week. You read that and you think, hey, I'm part of that. That's me, that is. So that's nice. And, they are pretty tasty as well, so that's a bonus. Tayo Tavius says, hey Stu, I plan on having a YouTube channel, and I already know that there will be a lot of work to do. My question is, do I need the professional hardware to grow? I see a lot of YouTubers having great success with the least expense or improvement in time, and I know that I will update my rig and other things through time. What do you have to say? What's essential? And what made you grow? So, equipment. You can do YouTube on the cheap. You can. I mean, as long as you've got a PC that's moderately capable, something that you can edit a video on, you can get away with it. It's nice to have a decent microphone, but again, you can just about get by with a cheapo headset microphone. So it comes down to a question of how much you're prepared to spend, and the microphone is probably the first place to invest, as sound quality, if it's poor, will annoy people like nothing else. Beyond a decent PC and microphone, there's not much else you need, so you can be relatively lean on the old finances, but it depends on what you want to do. So nothing's really essential, but there are quite a few things which definitely help. As for what made me grow, ultimately it comes down to making videos, and making videos that people want to watch, that people stick around for. That's really the only trick. There are quite a few formulas which have been proven to work on YouTube. You know, the sort of the typical gaming channel content, whether it's in the mold of PewDiePie or you know, there are different styles of channels for different styles of games, and you don't have to copy them exactly. You can certainly try and find your own style. But it doesn't hurt to take notes. Finding an audience can be tough though, and there isn't really a formula that's guaranteed to work. But best thing about YouTube is you can try whatever you like. And if nobody watches, well, you can always try something else. JMT Decky says, what is your view on the decriminalisation of drugs? Do you think it will aid drug addicts to not be persuaded by the law as some believe they are today? Or are you completely against drugs in their entirety? Generally speaking, I am a permissivist with a dose of pragmatism. Now, obviously, freedom, liberty, good thing. And the freest society, the one with the most liberty, would not have any restrictions on the ownership or consumption of drugs. However, there is a societal cost to drug use, certainly some types of drugs, associated with health issues, crime, that sort of thing. So there is a pragmatic reason to curb the use of some of the worst drugs that exist, like, heroin, PCP, alcohol. The societal cost of alcohol is incredibly high. The only reason it's not banned outright is because of the cultural history we have of drinking. Which, I like a beer, but obviously some people like 20 beers at the weekend, and then they like to have a bit of a fight. And that's where the societal cost is. And it does become quite difficult to separate out the person who has, a nice glass of wine after a meal and the person who goes out binge drinking. So banning it outright, probably not the right thing in that case. But taxation, certainly, based on the amount of alcohol sold, that's one way to limit consumption. And I think that's a route that a lot of countries take in their approach to alcohol, certainly here in the UK. So, if you want to have a bottle of wine with your dinner, you can do. You'll pay a little bit extra, but because, it's a luxury and you want it, it doesn't matter. And that money goes to the government and then, they've got another revenue stream. It's win-win. Anyway, with regards to the decriminalisation of drugs, I do think drug users should be treated as victims and not criminals. I can see the merits of having criminal charges for, those with amounts suited for distribution, but as far as individual consumption is concerned, I'm not sure what the best approach is, but, you don't want to be putting people in prison just for taking a substance. Anyway, I shan't dwell on politics. I will say the status quo here in the UK is all right. I think we could maybe make some improvements. Marijuana is kind of the hot button topic, isn't it? The societal cost of marijuana is very little. People don't smoke marijuana then go and smash in shops or have fights. There are very few health issues associated with marijuana. It is quite a safe substance. It's safer than tobacco. It's safer than alcohol. And there's a very strong cause for legalizing it and taxing it. Certainly some states in the US have started this, and it's worked pretty well. There haven't really been any major changes in consumption. People who want to smoke marijuana are already smoking marijuana. It's just now they're being taxed. Anyway, I think that's a good thing. Scumbag Allen says, Stu, have you ever thought about reviving the Behind the Scenes series? Behind the Scenes, an insight into various aspects of my production. I do sometimes think about doing stuff like this. The only trouble is to do it properly takes a decent amount of work, and that tends to be time that could go onto my main projects. So while the thought does occasionally cross my mind, it normally ends up pushed to the side in favour of something more exciting. RVB fan says, what's the strongest liquor you've ever had? And did you remember that night? Strongest liquor, probably a 70% ABV absinthe. At that point, you're basically drinking rectified spirits mixed with green food colouring, but I suppose it gets the job done. As for remembering, well, clearly I do remember, otherwise I wouldn't be able to tell you about it. Edwin Vargas says, M1911 or M9? I like my measures metric, so I'd probably go for the M9. I'd rather have something in 10mm auto, but there aren't too many handguns chambered for a centimetre. Jonathan Van Valen says, hey Stu, noticed you sort of play a hodgepodge of games on here. Is there a genre or specific game series you don't like / never played? There are plenty of games I've never played, of course. As far as game genres that I generally don't like at all, sports games. I'm not a fan of sports games, really. I've played a few in my time. I've even enjoyed some of them. But stuff like FIFA, it's just not something I seek out. I got a free copy of FIFA 14 with my Xbox One. Never played it. Max Chan says, "Hi Stu, have you ever played or considered playing a game in the Mortal Kombat series? What are your thoughts on it?" I've played a few. I've played a few in the Mortal Kombat series. I think I've played the first 3. I had the first one back in the day on the Commodore Amiga, which was an adequate port. It was okay. And I own the last one released, Mortal Kombat 9, which was just called Mortal Kombat, I think. Yeah, they're all right. The X-ray moves, really, really cool in the last one. Did like that a lot. It is kind of a novelty game, though, isn't it? I mean, back in the day, it really only sold because it had the fatalities. That was kind of the reason to play it. Otherwise, you'd be better off with Street Fighter 2. I mean, let's be honest, that was a better fighting game. But Mortal Kombat, it had the gore, and that's why we all played it. Lou933964 says, "Are you a cologne guy?" I'm not sure what a cologne guy is. I mean, do you mean somebody who wears cologne on occasion? Or do you mean somebody who literally bathes in cologne and reeks of it all the time? Because I'm not the latter. But I do sometimes wear an aftershave. Only on special occasions, like when I leave the house. I will wear Paul Smith. Paul Smith is my scent. Mr. Right Sab says, "What are your go-to sandwich ingredients? I want to know the type of bread, spreadable, sauce, if applicable, and fillings. You can tell a lot about a man by his sandwich choices." I actually like quite a lot of different sandwiches, so it's quite tough to choose one. I'm going to paint you 2 scenarios. The first is, what would I order in Subway? The second is, what sandwich could I have if I could have any sandwich? Alright, first of all, Subway, my go-to order. Footlong, spicy Italian, toasted, with cheese, on honey wheat bread, with red onions, chilies, and chili sauce. That's my go-to Subway order. Now, if I could have any sandwich in the world prepared for me, I would probably go for a Reuben. I'll read the description off Wikipedia for those who aren't familiar with the Reuben sandwich. The Reuben sandwich is a hot sandwich composed of corned beef, Swiss cheese, sauerkraut, and Russian dressing, grilled between slices of rye bread. Several variants exist. I think I'd rather have pastrami than corned beef, although that might be the Rachel, although the Rachel comes with coleslaw instead of sauerkraut. But that's alright, I don't mind either. But yeah, nice sandwich. I'm a big fan of beef brisket, the pastrami cuts, the corned beef. So you've got the meat, you've got the cheese, you've got the tang of the sauerkraut, and the rye bread gives it a nice solid base, and everything's all warm and nice, melted together. It's a good sandwich. Nice solid sandwich. Turtle with an M16 says, "Have you seen the Homefront The Revolution trailer, Stu? I know you're looking forward to it. I remember you saying you liked the Battle Commander mode a while back." I haven't seen the trailer, but I am familiar with the game. It was originally being developed by THQ, I think, but then they went bust and Crytek bought them. But then Crytek have been a little bit iffy as well. So, I don't know. I think it's had a bit of a broken development, so I don't have much faith in it. I'm not going to pre-order it. I'll say that much. That said, the first Homefront was okay. I did enjoy the Battle Commander mode. I think that was quite innovative. It was like the GTA police star system. And the more kills you got, the more incentivized and aware the enemy were of your position. Which was cool, But yeah, I'm definitely going to wait for reviews. Spritzy Thornbury says, "Hey Stu, what are your thoughts on the upcoming game, Dying Light? Also, will you be getting it?" It's from the same people who did Dead Island, isn't it? It might be okay, I guess. Dead Island was one of those games that it was a bad game, but I still kind of liked it. I mean, I'm not going to tell you that it was like a great accomplishment in interactive entertainment history, because it wasn't. But I did have a lot of fun bashing zombies' heads in. So, yeah, Dying Light, I'm not going to buy it on launch, and you probably shouldn't either. But again, if it reviews well, or if the consensus is that it's a pretty good game, then I might get it, maybe, at some point, possibly. Applefish says, do you ever ask anyone in real life for second opinions when you're working on a video? Rarely. It doesn't really fit my production schedule, really. I like to get things out as soon as they're done. Not as soon as they're done, but I don't like sitting on a finished video. It's rare to get any sort of useful feedback. The only thing that is useful is picking up on obvious, glaring mistakes that I somehow am blind to, like typos in the game information cards, that sort of thing. Sometimes I put the wrong date, which is hardly surprising when there might be 100 separate cards in a video, and I've got to type them all out manually. It makes sense that there's going to be a typo every few videos at least. And I could probably avoid that by going through a review process. But, it doesn't matter. It's just YouTube. The Gaming Weasel says, Stu, will you cover the M4A1 along with the M16 in the next season of Iconic Arms? Or are you going to make them 2 separate episodes? They are going to be 2 separate episodes. I mean, let's face it, there are enough M16s and enough M4s to warrant having 2 episodes for them. What I plan to do is focus on 2 separate eras for the weapon for the AR-15 platform. For the M16 video, I'll be focusing on the earlier phases, the transition away from full rifle calibers into the 5.56 round, and its use in Vietnam, that sort of era. And with the M4, I'll be focusing more on modern day stuff, and the transition to primarily urban combat with a stronger focus on combined arms and an embedded, designated marksman within a squad. So, 2 eras, 2 facets of the same platform, really. It should work out just fine. I also plan on doing a follow-up to the AK-47 video. There may be another episode on the latter-day Kalashnikov derivatives. So the AK-74, the 74U, the Krinkov, and, stuff like the AK-103 and the AK-12 and all of the recent ones. I'll bundle all of those into a single video, I think, and I'll talk about the evolution of the Kalashnikov platform. Chibi Changa says, hey Stu, 2 questions. 1. What's your favourite typeface? And 2. What's the trick to having that nice, narration-esque tone when you speak? I'm a bass baritone myself, though I always feel like I'm wasting my potential since I'm usually pretty monotone. Favourite typefaces? I'm a fan of Helvetica, it's a classic. Cecilia. I'm a big fan of slab serifs, or semi-serifs. Cecilia's a semi-serif, nice font. Lubelin Graph, probably my favourite slab serif. Apart from that, I'm a big fan of geometric stuff. Futura is a frequent friend of mine. As far as narrating stuff and getting a voice for that, the best thing to do is probably to practice. If you look back at my very earliest videos, the Modern Warfare 2 weapon guides, right at the start, you'll notice a distinct difference in my delivery style. It's a lot meeker, a lot more vulnerable, less confident. So with practice, I guess, you'll culture your own style of narration. It's a little bit more pronounced, a little bolder. And if all else fails, there's always voice training, I suppose. I haven't had voice training, but I kind of feel like maybe I should, because it might make my narration better. But maybe it's a scam, like chiropractic medicine. Who knows? Anders Rasmussen says, what do you think about Jim Sterling? All I know is I could never trust a man who wears gloves indoors. Seth Matthews says, just wondering, Stu, did you consider Zork for your open world video? Not that I'm terribly upset that you didn't include it or anything. I was just interested in hearing your opinion on its open worldedness. Are text adventures considered open world games? My instinct is that they are not, because it feels like an extension of the very definition of open world games. I did touch on this at the end, how it does become difficult to pin down an exact definition of what an open world game is. I guess with Zork, you've only really got one quest within the game, haven't you? You do have freedom of movement, but you don't have the freedom to choose what quest you do. The same goes for Rogue. Within the dungeon walls, you've got absolute freedom of movement, but ultimately you don't get to choose your quest, which is the Amulet of Yendor. So it's only by the virtue of the fact that Ultima 1 has, I think, 8 separate locations with 8 separate quests, that you can do in any order that you choose. I think that is what makes the difference between an open world game, certainly under one definition. But it's not clear-cut. It isn't clear-cut. Anyway, there is an argument to be made for Zork, not like some of the comments that I saw. All kinds of zany suggestions. Asteroids? Mario 64? Gran Turismo? I kid you not. Although, I will say, the more research I did into open world games, the less certain I was of the definition. You know, in retrospect, not a great subject for Origins. Open world games are popular, but it did end up being quite a nebulous concept. Anyway, it was a good enough development of the formula. It was my very first video in 2015 as well, but hopefully there'll be plenty more. So anyway, this week I am planning, developing and starting production on Iconic Arms Season 2. Because of the way that I'm front-loading this work, it means there might be a week or two without any videos on my main channel, but I'm still beavering away. I don't know. You guys, you like my videos, but you don't respect the process. Anyway, I shall see you next Wednesday for the next bonus, or on Sunday for Crush Dev Diary. Until then, farewell.